If we haven't met yet, my name is Ann Briggs. I'm the Communications and Program Specialist for the Nebraska Water Center, and so I will be facilitating our conversation today. So today for our seminar, we have 3 representatives from 3 different natural resource districts throughout the state, and we're going to talk about community engagement and water management and how they're different in these different areas. So we have Amanda Grint from the Papio, Missouri NRD. We have Lyndon Vogt from Central Platte, and we have Mike Merkin from Middle Niobrara. So the format for today, they're each going to share for 5 to 10 minutes about a community engagement project in their district. I have some facilitated questions that we'll discuss, and then we'll open it up to all of you for what kinds of questions you have. So we'll turn it over to Amanda first.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm with the Papio NRD, and so we are the 6 counties on the easternmost side of the state. We run along the Missouri River, and we encompass the Omaha metro area, which is the unique thing about our NRD. And it's pretty amazing. You know, we talk about the NRD structure, and you guys are probably all really familiar with it, but how we can address different resources of concern for different areas of the state, which is really, really amazing. And you'll hear, from each of us about different areas of priorities and concerns. So for the Papio NRD, we have 1/3 of the state's population resides in one watershed in our NRD. And so we have the challenge of trying to engage a lot of constituents for big projects. We do our biggest priority based on our budget. If you look at that, you've heard, where you spend your money is your top priority, if you look at things like that. So our budget at Papio, we spend about 40% of our budget on flood control. And in comparison, we spend 8% on water quality. And that's not to say that water quality is not a concern for us and a high priority, but in our area, we do not have widespread high nitrate problem. We have, of course, water quality concerns, but they're different than different areas of the state. A lot of our constituents are on municipal water. So there's just a difference in projects and community engagement. So I'll talk a little about some of our flood control projects. They're generally multi-million-dollar projects, in the 20 million-ish. Not all are that much, but big projects that need, big support from our constituents. And so we have a number of ways that we do that, and we've done that over the years, a lot of public meetings. Our style of community engagement has really evolved over the years. We've done initially a lot of public meetings, and especially back for kind of big ticket items, like when we were seeking bonding authority to finance some of these big flood control issues. So there was a lot of public meetings, a public campaign. We had advertisements. We also have a lot of recreation features tied to the work we do with flood control, but also trails and things that are on their own. So a lot of our community engagement is real fun. We've had a lot of different things. We work at Game and Parks quite a bit. People like fisheries, they like trails. So we've had a lot of really great grand openings. We've had contests at our reservoirs where we gave away kayak and some other things. We've had good social media campaigns, a whole slew of things, but I would say our biggest success for community engagement and kind of buy into our big projects and the money we need to spend for those projects came from a partnership with the communities in the Omaha metro area, the Papillion Creek Watershed Partnership. But the point being, for 2001, we started this. So for over 25 years, this group has worked together. And even though maybe people don't know the name Papio NRD, because we do a lot of work through the partnership, it really gets the word out, and it's consistent to all the different communities, the La Vistas, the Papillion, Ralston, Gretna, all those communities in Omaha and outside that make up the Omaha Metro. So that's been a real success story for us for community engagement, is to be part of a partnership that has a consistent message across the area. So I think that's probably our greatest success story. Maybe let Lyndon go.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's great. That's hard to follow. So the Central Platte NRD runs just our east side is just south of Grand Island, south of Columbus, and we run all the way to Gothenburg. So we're about 190 miles along the Central Platte River. So we're very flat. The majority of our district is very flat. So when we start talking flood control, when the Platte River floods, it usually, we worry about the house a quarter mile from it, but we also seems like we're worried about a house 5 miles from it. It spreads out. It's so flat where we're at. It spreads out. So it makes flood protection very difficult, to be quite honest with you. We've only got about 140,000 people total in our watershed. So Amanda probably has more in one drainage than we do in our entire district, about 2 million acres. So as far as budgeting, we're almost the opposite of them. We spend about 40% on water quality and quantity, and probably 10 to 15% on flood projects. So we do have 40 different flood control projects within the Central Platte NRD that are NRD owned and NRD built. And they range from a number of different, we have dry dams, we have wet dams, we have detention cells. Of course, when it's so flat, one of our flood control projects actually has a 550 acre detention cell in it. And so we've got the 40 flood control projects. We probably only have, I would say maybe 10 of them actually protect communities. The rest of them are protecting farmland and rural areas. And so it's much different. So our public engagement is probably much different too, because we might have a flood control project that affects 30 or 40 people, you know what I mean? And so it's our relationship with them and our conversations with them are pretty intimate, to be quite honest with you. We know what every person thinks and that is touched by that project. And our bigger ones, of course, are Kearney and Grand Island, and we do have flood control projects that protect both of them communities. And as Amanda said, I think one of the biggest challenges for us moving forward is not as much as the community engagement, but the cost of them projects. I mean, it seems like the last 2 or 3 we've finished up have been between that $15 and $30 million range, you know what I mean, or 28 million, I guess was our last one. And the ones we're working on since the flooding in 19, some of the requests we've had from communities, suddenly it seems like 40 to 50 million is kind of a low number on these projects. So as we move forward, community engagement and partners and partners with everyone to make these kinds of projects work are going to be more and more to us as we move forward. So like I said, we spend much more of our time on water quality and water quantity. Of our 2 million acres, 50% or 1 million of them are irrigated. So we have a heavily irrigated area, and of course sometimes that doesn't help our flooding issue either because it's so flat and a lot of time our ground is already saturated. And we average a flood every year somewhere within the NRD. We average a major flood every 6 years in our NRD. So it is something that we don't take lightly. We do have a full-time person that's working on them types of issues almost all the time. So I was just reading, believe it or not, I did prepare for this a little bit. I was reading the stat that said 90% of the presidential disaster declarations in the entire United States are flooding. And they're because of flooding, 90% of them. So that kind of surprised me that it's that high. So it does make you realize it is something important and something that we have so many other responsibilities going on, you know what I mean, that it's just one of our responsibilities, but it's a very important one. I think I'll pass it on to Mike and we'll go from there.
Well, I guess I'm going to completely be the other side of the spectrum. I think I was asked to talk a little bit more on the forestry management, but these guys talk about people and resources, and we're just the opposite. We're land, grass, trees, water, about 3 million acres in size, about 7,000 people in the district boundary. So quite the opposite, I guess, and stuff. Flooding, we get that. We had significant flooding in 2019 with a cyclonic blizzard, but it isn't that 2-3 day flooding. Ours was like 3-year flooding, where we had high water tables sitting across a lot of our sandhill pastures to the point that our average groundwater levels shot up over 5 foot after that year and stuff. But that brought another resource challenge that we had been already starting to address after the early 2000s with forestry management. And I grew up in Wisconsin, so I always kind of give Nebraska a little heckling, because what's Nebraska known for? Home Arbor Day. What are you supposed to do? Plant a tree. Well, we never managed trees and stuff. So when you work with the foresters and stuff across the state, they always like struggled about how do we do this and how do we cut trees and get people to cut trees? And I'm like, well, you just gotta go start doing it. Wisconsin, we use trees for everything. We have paper plants, we had toilet paper companies and whatever, we're using the mulch and the bark and everything else. And so we would talk to a lot of at the time, there was 3 active sawmills in the Black Hills coming down into some of the western part of Nebraska. Many in here probably remember the big Fort Robinson fire that took place over 40 some years ago. Well, 2006 was that next big event. Middle of July, 14 degree day. Valentine, right next to the community, erupted in fire, burnt up 4,000 acres. A week later, shattering, went up in smoke. Fast forward 2012, almost another duplicate carbon copy, just different location. So tying disease and drought stress on the forest, the Niobrara is now the largest remaining intact forest in the state of Nebraska, which is kind of funny because we haven't had an actual area or district forestry in its boundaries for close to 30 years. I love to give the Forest Service heck on that. We got some field reduction people finally, but back to like, if we're gonna manage forests, let's get some people here and manage it. But forestry management comes at a cost. The equipment's expensive. You get into true forestry management where you got skidders and bunch of fellers and stuff like that. That's the one thing Nebraska isn't doing. We're doing a lot of micromanagement forestry with skid steers and a little bit of chainsaws. And that I know in the 2012 fire, there was a lot of different entities came and they were very amazed on the ladder fuels with the component of the eastern cedar intermixed with the ponderosa pine and hardwoods. And that made it very, very interesting and tough to fight those fires. So we as Middle Niobrara and partnering with the Forest Service and Game Parks and any other entities that we've been trying to promote utilization, and we're getting a fair amount of individuals starting to cut and create brush piles. Brush management has definitely been a big component. A lot of that's been funded through EQIP or some programs through San Jose Task Force and others. But just like this year, it hasn't been very conducive to burn. So we had worked with DEQ and some of those to paint some equipment to start going in and chipping and utilizing, creating woody biomass. That stuff's been used for schools, playgrounds, trails, center pivot tracks, combination of everything. We started getting into doing composting. We even the last couple of years have actually, just like Chagrin State uses wood chips for heating their college, we went to heating our office and shop facilities with a small boiler system. So quite the mix of entities and individuals that really been involved. And I think one of the questions that I've been asked a lot of times is are we gonna run out of trees? And I think that's the one thing that's definite is it's a renewable resource, and we're blessed that trees continue to produce and regenerate. And in some case, many feel that the cedar component is taken over. The cedars by and large are native species, but it comes back to management, having them where they want them to be versus where they don't want to be, and managing for healthy grass systems versus managing for healthy forestry systems and stuff. So that's been an interesting mix of bringing the prescribed fire component in, the actual mechanical treatment of our forest, and then finding ways to utilize that. We've been very limited on sawmills throughout the region. There's even today there's a handful of individuals that got some small portable sawmills that they do a little bit of milling. Most recently, we had a group of Amish from Michigan that moved and bought up a fair amount of ground on the Niobrara, and they'll probably be as active as anybody right now, because the sawmill that was in Springview, that's been shut down for several years now. In Pope and Talbot and John Nyman and stuff out of the Black Hills, they're still doing a little bit of stuff up in South Dakota and Wyoming, but nothing actively taking place in the state of Nebraska this time. Oh, and there.
Yeah, thank you all for giving that overview. The first question that I have, so Lyndon and Mike, you both talked about emergency situations and the resources that you manage. So a flooding event or a fire event. What role does your NRD play in communicating with the public and managing that emergency event? And maybe how do you work with partners too when those events arise?
So the funny event for us, our first reach out is to the emergency management. We have a very good relationship with the counties, our emergency managers, you know what I mean? So we're working with them, and they're actually getting rolled out much more than we are, to be quite honest with you. So we reach out to our emergency management team. Normally, if you're in a bigger event, they're having regular meetings anyway and updating all of your partners and all entities. So I would have to say that's one of ours, of course. We have some levees and some dams that above our communities that we are concerned about in the types of events, especially like what we had in 19 and 20, you know what I mean? Was our last major floods. And so yeah, I would say that's our first contact, and that's where we make sure everybody's on the same page and know where everyone is and move forward with addressing them issues.
Yeah, I think the emergency management through the region 23, 24 up there, and some of those, group meetings to have some planning, development of those hazard mitigation plans, to try to be proactive, in different management things, but then also the reaction aspects. And I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get ahead of it. Last spring we had the Plum Creek fire. Actually, just last night, the winds come up in Long Pine and over to Bassett, lit up on fire. Last night, I haven't heard total damages and stuff for acres, but yeah, you get dry conditions, low humidity, and 40 plus mile per hour winds. Things get pretty exciting. So
Yeah, thank you. Amanda, you had mentioned that your district's community engagement strategies have changed over time. Could you tell us a bit about maybe what used to work and what works better now for your projects?
Sure. Yeah, it's really evolved, and I think probably you guys will know a lot of these meetings. We used to show up and invite a bunch of people, the impacted people as well as the public, maybe even without having one-on-one conversations with those impacted people first. Maybe just invite, come listen to a presentation. And it was a presentation and then stand and get yelled at, that was our mechanism for a while. Then, wise to that, we started having open houses, which allows less time to be yelled at, or at least people don't have to sit through a presentation and get more, and the idea, of course, open houses is stages of information so that people can come find out what they want to, and just find out the things they want to without having to be forced into like learning other things. Right now, I think that open house definitely has its place for sure, and even presentations. I mean, everything is different, it has its place, but we do a lot more social media, especially in the urban area, and when you're trying to reach the public, and how do they even feel that they're impacted by flooding? We really struggle with trying to educate people, but then again, I think do we need to? I mean, they see the park, the reservoir, they enjoy it, they're happy about that. I mean, we always provide that level of education, but do we need to make them understand that this is a flood control reservoir that's protecting, the downstream communities? So we've evolved and just trying to get their attention is really tough nowadays. So social media has really become big for us. I did bring these two because we're in the process of, we had rebranded a couple years ago, and we were redoing some of our, publications and things. And I mean, this was what people wanted. Look at this. I mean, is anyone going to read that? Nowadays, I mean, I looked at these and we thought, oh my goodness, they'll use the fishing map. I mean, look at these, like the words and the You know, so that's really an evolution for us. We aren't gonna do this anymore. I mean, people want interactive maps. We were talking earlier about our kids here, and you know, my daughter in college, like if you gave her this map of the park, I mean, she wouldn't even know where she was at, you know? She said, how do you know where you're at on these maps? I'm like, oh geez. So, you know, I think we really will go to like interactive, and that's what people want for trails, for information, just, you know, so many words, nobody wants to do that anymore. So that's really short and sweet is kind of our evolution.
Yeah. Mike and Lyndon, have you had similar involvements over time?
Yeah, we really have, you know, I think our last 3 flood control projects that we've been working on, we went to a story map online and that's, we've gotten away from the flyers, you know, and so people call us and are upset about something. We say, all you gotta do is go on our website and it shows you the story map of when the flooding occurred, what we're working on, who it's affect. All the maps are there and they're interactive and it's up to them if they want to use them or not. Yeah, we've done the same thing. We've kind of run away from the flyers because people don't read them, and you know, and on the public meeting aspect of it too, we went more to the one-to-one, exactly like you said. And I think what it's helped more than anything is you have a meeting of 50 people and you have 4 people that just control the meeting, you know, and they're negative and they're upset. And so what happens to us when we have the meetings, then we have another meeting the next 2 or 3 days for everybody calling us wanting to visit about things that they were scared to bring up to in a big in a larger group. And so that's really changed actually. Yeah, I would certainly agree with.
Yeah, well, we got a couple of recreation areas, but a lot of our stuff, that's because we don't have the media outlets. I mean, we're losing our local papers, the radio advertising, but the word of mouth, just person to person, show and tell is still vital in much of our part of the world. I mean, most of our news either comes out of Sioux Falls or Denver or somewhere else, so it doesn't pay to do a lot of advertising that way. So back to show and tell and getting, you know, having some field days and getting people out or landowners start talking to each other and what they've been able to do or been successful at. And there again, there's been some successes with field treatment areas, especially in that northern area, that have really helped, you know, with when some wildfires have occurred and different things. And just the changes that I've seen with the struggles of prescribed burn. You know, there was times that we had willing landowners, but we didn't have the insurance liability or the equipment and whatever. And we've never really been overly successful with a prescribed burn group in our area, mainly because of the age demographic. Do you really want 60, 70-year people climbing up and down, you know, canyons and stuff like that? So, we're not 60 yet. That's the truth. I mean, so a lot of the prescribed burning that we have done has been with contract crews or something like that. TNC, the Nature Conservancy, has had some stuff along with some help with game parks and some other groups. But there again, a lot of planning and effort, and there's been with that wildfire threat, there's always that threat and mindset in the back of people's minds of the Thetford fire and the fire that jumped over Merritt and things that get awry or whatever. So back to it's that bigger holistic aspect of grassland and forestry management that I really hit on and doing just taking when I talk to landowners, you got to talk about doing something. You know, it's no different than maintaining your equipment or fixing fences or rotating pastures. If it's doing 5 acres or 500 acres, something's better than nothing. And that's where we've tried to, as Middle Niobrara, fortunately working with our partners and successful with some grants. We've gotten equipment for chippers and shredders and mulchers and compost turners. And to date, I think we've chipped almost close to 4,000 tons of chips. Worked with 50 plus landowners, the federal and state agencies, and making products that are being used back out for soil health amendments. Working with Dr. Snow on some stuff and Amy Schmidt with some of that, the biochar aspects, and then the spin-offs of that is the outside trainings, that go on with those different components of utilization biomass.
Yeah, thank you. Switching gears a little bit, you've all talked about how you communicate with partners, how you interact with the public. I'd love to hear about if there are youth engagement programs or activities that your district currently does or that you're interested in taking on in the future. Sure.
We do have we have a very active education group at the Papio NRD, and they spend a lot of time in classrooms. We have animals, we do, they have a number of different areas of focus that teachers can choose to use for their curriculum. And they've really worked hard to make that curriculum something that fits in with the school districts in our NRD district. So I think that's been really great. And I mean, I personally just think anytime the youth are involved in nature, that they're outside, that they learn a little something, it makes it better for all of us, better for the next generation to want to work in that field, to be appreciative of that field. So I think that is one really strong suit that we have at the Papio. We have some dedicated teachers to doing that. Another, just a side note of what they traveled a lot of classrooms, but during COVID, when they couldn't do that, they recorded a lot of their curriculum classes. And then since we just we revamped our website, and we thought, why not just put the recorded ones on the website so that teachers, I mean, they book up, 6 months in advance or so. So if they're not able to, they can use the video and some materials that are posted online. So I think that's another really good way to get people involved that engaged that they couldn't before. And then lastly, like we have a number of events that involve youth in our district, but the biggest one we have is World of Water. And that really is, again, the partnership with all the Omaha Metro communities that work together. We do host it at our NRD, but I would venture that there's thousands of kids that come, and I don't even know if they would necessarily know the NRD. But again, they're getting a consistent message about the importance of water quality, water quantity, and a lot of fun activities that revolve around water. So that's a big event. A lot of Girl Scout, Boy Scouts attend that event.
Yeah, we have a similar, so we have the Groundwater Children's Festival every year in our district that we bring in somewhere between 800 and 1,000 students every year for that. That's a one-day festival, so there's no way we could pull that off without like 100 partners. It's a tremendous undertaking for our staff. We do similar projects. We probably don't have near the number of people that you have as far as that reach out, but I was trying to think. I think we have about 35, 40 schools in our district is all, to be quite honest with you, and so it's pretty easy for us to make contact to every one of them schools, and our INE person actually does a biannual newsletter that we send out just for schools. So we're reaching out to every age, every class size, every class age. And we're asking them what they want, and then we'll bring that into their classroom, or they can come to our facility and we'll work on whatever they like. So yeah, I can't even begin to name all of the different projects we have, but we actually pull in our non-INE people too. I mean, we have a burn person, we have wildlife habitat, we have a range person, we have a hydrologist on staff. So whatever they would like to hear about, we never turned down the opportunity to come into a classroom. So
Yeah, I think we're kind of do the as needed aspect of education. We got some very focused, like 7th grade tree planting days and different things. One of the things that I would say come out of one of the proactive aspects that came out of the 2012 fire was former State Senator Al Davis. In the legislature, we got passed LB 634, which a lot of that money was for fuels reduction, aerial support, the seat bases. But the other part of it was for training and education, which helped establish sawmills in Ainsworth, Chadron, and Gering. And I know they're looking at expanding some of that. And back to getting people interested in forestry, logging, those type of components, let alone the safety aspects, the math, aspects when you get into milling and drying lumber and different things. Solving problems, and with waste management, with the landfills, that was always a big conversation with former NDEQ was landfill and waste management, and where you go with it, you know, that waste product. Or on the community has, you know, big storm damage, I think we worked with just the city of Valentine at least 5 different times and over my years on waste cleanup and fuels reduction and made a ton of biomass that gets used back on playgrounds or ball fields. Or some of the local trails and stuff, so getting the kids now involved to help plant trees and show them proper ways, but then back to utilize them. One of the neat projects we did last year, and I gotta give Amanda and John and Papio credit, because you guys were probably ones of the first ones in the state working with Jim Meyer on that Nebraska National Memorial Forest stuff. And they were wanting to expand that to all the counties across the state. We kind of worked with Jim and got kind of a neat deal. They want to have him put a member of the veterans and stuff that have passed associated with each tree. So we worked with the city of Valentine and then the Kepler Brown Rock area down at Bassett, and we had the kids help us actually plant trees, put mulch and stuff around them, and then they set up and got a name that you can go online and the families can put information about each of those individuals and stuff. And that, I think that program, you know, planned for several more sites. I don't know if you guys had some in your area, Lyndon. I think there was some talk and stuff. But anyway, neat project that, yeah, started down here in the metropolis of Nebraska and slowly getting real in Nebraska. So thanks, Amanda.
Well, from here, I think I'll turn it over to the audience for any questions or discussion points you want to bring up. And for those of you watching online too, I'll pull the Zoom up and bring your questions over. So I'll see you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned water quality, and that's certainly my area. I'm curious, we think a lot about nitrate in Nebraska. Is that what you're hearing about from your constituents in terms of their concerns on water quality or other issues coming up? Do you see other issues related to water quality? What are you thinking about?
I would say nitrates are what we hear most about because that's what we hear most about, to be quite honest with you. I think we were about and I think that's really our fault for not getting the word out. I think the Med Center has been a tremendous help the last couple of years. And we certainly appreciate that. We've had met the last 2 years, that's 3 years actually. We've had someone from the Med Center. We have a water programs conference every year. We just had ours a couple of weeks ago here in Lexington. And but we are, for the last 3 years, we've had someone from the Med Center come out and talk about the effects of water quality and the effects of nitrates and human health. And so I do think that's becoming more and more. We're getting more and more questions on that. It's pushing the issue more because our producers, like I said, we have over 1 million irrigated acres. We do have high nitrate issues and on probably 2/3 of them acres, you know, and so but our producers have heard it forever, you know. So it's refreshing to have the Med Center finally that has the research and the information to really make a difference and make people think about it in a different way.
Yeah, that nature of the beast of we take our water quality for granted, you know, especially in the sand hills for pretty pristine, 200 to 500 foot thickness of aquifer. You know, our average nitrate levels in our district are probably 3 to 5 parts per million. I would say several areas kind of trending up, but we also have locations that are, you know, hit 90 a few wells and stuff. So you know, that's where we've been working with Dr. Noah and running some isotope samples. It's easy to point fingers and point blame. It's on commercial fertilizer, it's on the feedlot. You know, it's interesting to get some of them results back and see that if it's not necessarily all commercial fertilizer, some organic aspects and stuff. So taking water quality for granted is a big thing, just like taking water quantity. Like I said, we you hate to even mention that, you know, our groundwater levels, you know, shot up 5 foot in 1 year, you know, or more. I mean, I had wells that really, you know, floating posted going up about 20 foot after 2019. They're in the middle of the Kelby Forest and stuff. So kind of blessing in disguise, but on the flip side, it causes challenges with both sides of it. More water, it gets more erosion, more runoff, everything else. You know, our district, we're lucky, I guess, in one aspect, we only deal with about 5% of our district being, irrigated and stuff, so 150,000 acres.
At the Papio, we do have two areas that have high nitrates, and that is probably what we hear the most from constituents about, because again, it's out there and there's a lot of great information that's kind of come out recently even, and so that's probably what we hear about the most, but that's not the biggest impairment in our district. So for us, really E. coli. Almost really, well, every strain really in the Papio is impaired for E. coli or aquatic habitat.
Trying to find cost cutting.
Yeah, I think that 319 aspects of impairments, and I know the state's got maps, and now the current NDWE, whatever, has that basin rotation on a 5-year basin aspects, and moving around to track some of that stuff has been key to monitor. But the same thing, like when you get into, I'll use the example of Merritt Reservoir or down at Long Pine State Park, it's taking that time when people are there and asking you questions to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're finding, because those impairments are present. So good question.
Rachel, did you have a question?
Yes, I'm curious if you would speak to how you work with your board and how they inform, how you select your priorities, help with community engagement, whatever you want to say about your boards. Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question.
Our board chairman is right.
Oh.
And I'm not just saying this because he's here, but we have a very supportive board of really all our projects. And I think, and it definitely the priorities, that our board takes, every so many years, they kind of assess the priorities again and just kind of redirect us if we need to. And, flood control is generally the number one priority, and water quality. But I would say our board really, they show up to our events, the grand openings. They're seeing at a lot of these things. So I guess I would say very supportive, and I'm not just saying that.
Joe.
I have a very good board. I'm fortunate. We have a 21-member board. I just told someone that the other day, about 60% of our board members are producers. I mean, they're corn farmers in our district. And we probably, Central Platte, since 1984, has probably had some of the strictest water quality regulations and cropping regulations there are. And so our producers put them on themselves, and they put them on their neighbors. And so, our board is really supportive of where we're at, what we're doing. We try to have a retreat once a year with just our board and 2 or 3 staff members to kind of go over the priorities and talk about budgeting and what it costs to address some of the priorities, of course. But yeah, we have for having a 21-member board, so none of them are here. So yeah. I would say all boards are the same, and this is kind of true, and it's not kind of true, because I worked for a 13-member board, 17-member board, 21-member board. It says, how do you work with a 21-member board? And honestly, a third of them are there because they want to be and they want to do the right thing. A third of them are there because someone told them they should be there, or they were in because they were upset about something. And they turn into really good board members once they get educated, to be quite honest with you. And I shouldn't say they're not educated, but they're focused on one thing when they come in. But after they're there for a few months and realize there's way more greater things than they're worried about, and it affects way more people than just them, they become really good board members. And then a third of them are on their way to somewhere else, I always say. But that's being not fair to my board, and it's probably not being fair to your board to say that. But I've always seen that, you know what I mean? It's like all boards are the same. It don't matter if you have 3 or if you have 20, you know what I mean? It's you have your leaders on them boards, and when they get going the right direction, a lot of time as staff, we just kind of get out of their way and they set priorities for us. Our job is to do what they want done and make sure that gets carried out.
Yeah, providing that guidance. I mean, we're one of the smaller boards, the opposite side, 7, and for exactly the same reasons. They get up because they're upset about something or thing, but once they realize the bigger picture of all the things that You know, and back to the 12 statutory departments and entities are involved with, and that districts and across not only their area, but across the state. So getting them to make time, take time to be involved not only at the local level, but at the state and at the national level is a commitment. And some of them do it better than others. But I think that bigger picture of showing, telling, and leading, providing direction for them so they can make good informed decisions is what brings success. Not always easy.
So back to the community engagement. How are you dealing with the social media aspect when a lot of people get their information from that, but that information is wrong? It's portrayed as a fact, but facts are real, and that information is incorrect. So it puts you kind of behind the curve. Has that been an impact, especially in our time, how people consume information? They do it quickly. They just assume they saw it on the web, their phone, that it must be right.
Go ahead.
No, I don't.
District that doesn't do a lot with social media. I know it's very prevalent in rural Nebraska in our area. If you want to know anything that's going on, I would agree, 100% agree with you. Most of the time it's very inaccurate. Back to that word of mouth and trying to run some newspaper articles or, you know, have conversations within the individuals. But that's the problem, is most of the time those that are making statements don't even come to the meetings, don't want to participate, yet they're going to point fingers and blame, you're wasting my tax dollars, you're wasting federal tax dollars, and it might not even have anything to do with money in that regards. And that's tough. Even in our rural setting, it can be very discouraging. At the end of the deal, you still got to go back to those board meetings and your monthly and yearly, you know, goals and budgets and what you want to get accomplished.
So I don't know if we do this right, Tom. I know my staff certainly don't agree with me sometimes on it, but I refuse to respond to a social comment that is just so far off the wall that it doesn't deserve to have a comment. You know what they say about wrestling with pigs, you know, that's how I feel about that. I really do. And we spend our time on the people that are affected, whose property is affected by what we're doing. It is who we spend our time with, to be quite honest with you. And that can be a challenge, because when you're doing flood control projects, the person whose property is being affected the most may not be the one that's getting the benefit from the flood control projects. And that's one of the, from what I've seen, that's one of the biggest challenges we have with flood control projects, is the person that you're working with that's maybe giving up some land. I mean, not that they're not getting paid for it, or you know, but they may not be getting the benefit of that. So when we get them really off the wall comments or just way out there, I refuse to respond to them, and I refuse to let my staff respond to them, because then you've entered their worlds, and their world don't exist in my mind, to be quite honest with you. So I just, we move on without them, and we make sure we reach out to the people that we know have been engaged and that are affected by what we're doing, meaning their property is being affected, and kind of leave them off to the side. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but that's how we do it.
I do. I think that's interesting. Because I don't think our way is maybe the right way either. But I will tell you this story. It was the very first board meeting I went to when I started working at the NRD. This was probably almost 20 years ago now. And we had a lot of contentious things going on, and the media was there a lot. And so the very first board meeting, and then there was an article in the Omaha World Herald the next day. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I was there, and this is not a topic. I had never had that experience before where I thought everything was just a fact. And so that's my experience with seeing how that works. But I would say, as I thought about your question, and what we do, whether it's right or not either, is we really try to address everything and right away. And that's really a commitment we've made at the district, is to whoever that question needs to go to at our staff, our PR individual will get that to them. We try to get back with that person right away. But we had been talking before this about, my personality is to try to, I think people will understand if they know all the facts and they know everything, and that's not always the case, as we talked about. So I don't know that that's the right answer even, but we tend to lean that way, just trying to answer everyone.
I guess I should say, when we don't address them, it's only if it's a social media. If it's a question directly to us or a comment directly to us, we will address it or address with that person. But if it's over social media, we are not going to answer it on social media.
Yeah, sure.
Amanda, we are hearing a lot of issues with the data center cooling, power needs and water needs, but I know power is a different issue. I heard from Congressman Bacon's office, but what about the water? How much they're using? Any idea?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I think a misconception is that the data centers, at least in the Papio, are using well water, and they are not. They're using MUD water. Now, there's still an impact, right? Because MUD's water comes from, groundwater and the Missouri River, and they have the Platte River plant. So, I mean, there's an impact, but it isn't well directly.
So our district, as you well know, is over and fully appropriated, so any new water uses are offset. And so the only ones that have not are up to a municipality, and we've just started down that path with municipalities that we're looking back a number of years, but moving forward, anything that hooks to them is either going to have to be offset by the municipality, or the municipality is going to require them. We will require the offset, and the municipality can decide if they want to supply that offset or make the person that is using the water supply that offset. And we're working with a couple of communities right now that have some economic development coming in that are fairly high water use, you know what I mean? And so that will be hooked to municipal systems. So in our mind, the municipality is, if it's hooked to a municipal system, the municipality is held liable for any effects on stream flow and any consumptive use. So I know one of the municipalities has a contract with that developer. The developer will supply that offset for the city, but our agreement with the city right now on that. So yeah, so because of our situation being fully and over appropriated, have to offset anything. That's why we build dry dams now, not wet dams, and that's why we don't have a huge.
And what is the growth projection for the tri-cities you have, like Grand Island, Kearney?
Yeah, we do have a growth prediction, and honestly, the municipal consumptive use for the municipality itself hasn't grown that much. It's actually declined. So we're not in our situation, we're responsible for municipal growth, meaning human consumption portion of it, and lawn watering and parks. We offset that, but any industrial growth is required to be offset either by the industrial or municipality. So we're not overly concerned about the municipal growth itself, the number of people there, just because as you look over the last 30 years, it's actually trended downward. So if we can look back to 96, or what their levels were 96 or 05, almost every community in the Central Platte is less water than it was then, as far as per capita.
Any other questions?
Oh, I will. So, Lyndon, I think you talked about funding. Maybe you all talked about funding a little bit. And because we've matured so much as a state for water projects, they have become bigger. The price tags are numbers that people still can't reconcile in their own mind how big they are. Federal government, state dollars, they're not as much as they used to be, and certainly don't reflect this change of increased cost and size. It also creates an interesting competition between NRDs. go after these sources where before you could get, all the NRDs could benefit from a program like your reclamation water smart. Now you're competing against each other. How are you working that through to try and find those funding mechanisms?
Try to be first in line, Tom. That is a challenge and so we have. So in the last 3 or 4 years, we've worked with 3 federal grants through the WFPO operation, the Watershed Flood Protection Operations grants, just to see if the projects we're looking at is feasible. And the nice thing is the planning and the design of them are paid 100% by the federal government if you receive the grants. And we have one of them that did really didn't have a positive rate of return. So it's going by the wayside. We have another one where that actually has no public, no one that it affects is interested because of the amount of farming that is involved, to be quite honest with you. But we have a third one that most likely is going to move forward and it's very expensive. So we're working with the county, we're working with the city, we're working with possibly a landowner too that it will affect that has quite a bit of property that we protected by it. But with that said, even with the NRD and the municipality and the counties, we're still probably $30 million short of doing the project. So if we don't have state or federal dollars, it won't get done. I mean, it won't get done in a timely fashion. And what bothers me most about this, the last project that we finished up about 4 years ago, when we started that project, I think it was a $13 million project. When we finished that project, it was a $28 million project. And so if we're looking at a project today that is 50 million, which sounds horrible, but it's an average project anymore. And so if we're going to wait 2 or 3 years to get federal dollars or state dollars just to finish design, and then you got 2 or 3 years worth of construction on there, well, it could easily become a $75 to $80 million project. And I don't know how them are going to get done in the future. I mean, they're going to be done with partnerships, and the federal government's going to have some involvement in there, I think. But
even then, I think the scary part is the federal program through that WFPO, 50 million, we're up to 500 million. Well, 500 million sounds like a lot of money, but if you got one project taking 50 million and you got to divvy that out to 49 other states and other projects, let alone the 36 WFPOs that the NRD's initiated in the state of Nebraska.
we have another project's 120 million, but I think we're going to kill it.
So yeah, my little 30 million long pine stuff. So I'll take the money first.
Yeah, and we're always looking for new ways, to fund things. We were successful in a FEMA brick grant for a flood control reservoir, which had not happened before. Those are now gone, that's part of that. We're looking at the potential for some low interest, very long-term loans through the federal government to get some of these projects done, and it kind of mimics the bonding authority that we had, and then there's the potential for additional bonding authority, and I think it's going to have to be something like that, something big like that where we can pay it back over time because it's too huge.
It's Papio the only NRD that has bonding authority for it. Yeah,
Currently.
Yeah, so Papio is the only NRD that has bonding authority for projects like that. And I think that's something we're going to have to bring to the legislature in the next year or two if we're going to move forward with projects like that. And that bonding authority does not give you more levy authority. You still have to live within your levy. It just it allows you to low interest.
Yeah, so we can use a part of our existing levy to pay those bonds. Right. And it sets the limit on how much of that you can use to pay the bonds, but it doesn't increase.
That question made me wonder, so when communities need to get water treatment for things like nitrate or some of the other water quality concerns, I assume they're running into some of these same funding questions, and are they looking to you guys to help them fund those projects, or where are they trying to explore? Historically, I think there was more federal funding, but
yeah, I think our rural water districts utilize those revolving, USDA has loans and then the state revolving fund, and I think they'd be in the same boat as that.
Now, we don't have any rural water districts that we're a part of, but we have not financially assisted any of our communities on nitrate removal, reverse osmosis, whatever you say. Yeah, I think it's gonna be more of a challenge for everybody moving forward, just because there's less financial assistance, and the price is just, since 2020, the price of everything's doubled, you know. We'll just watch Amanda and see what she's doing.
Along the lines of money and finances, you guys have built a lot of reservoirs in your district, Amanda. Has there ever been any examination of the positive economic impact that those are bringing to your community?
Yeah, and that really is something that we're diving into a little more now. I think that telling our story better is a really important thing, and that's a big part of community engagement. And one thing, like when we can tell people like, and we had some big rains in 2024, and Papillion really would have flooded had these reservoirs not been in place. And I think some people recognize that, but should we be able to analyze that better, give people a number, a dollar value on what that saved? That's important, and we're working. There's just better tools to do that now. There's better models that are easier, and it doesn't cost as much to get that information. But then, there's been kind of hit and miss studies on what the value of land is around reservoirs. We try not to really concern ourselves with that. Obviously, if people want to live by a lake, they're going to pay more. We don't put them there for that reason. We put them there to capture as much of the watershed as we can. So we try to stay away a little bit from that. But yeah, there's economic value to them for sure. But there's also flood control value, recreation value, things that we need to do better about telling our story with those dollar values, I think.
So the last two major floods we've had, we've worked with either a private consultant or the Corps of Engineers to come up with estimated savings. And one of our projects that protects the southwest or the south central part of Grand Island, one flood event there, the Corps estimated that it saved $80 million in damages, and it was about an $18 million project total, to be honest with you. And then in 19, when we had some pretty good flooding, we had just finished another project. Just finished it weeks prior to the flooding in 19. And that one event, that was a $28 million project, and the estimate on that was $30 million or $60 million from that one event, because it protected about 500 homes in Northwest Grand Island that would have flooded in 19 if it would have been for that event. So we've started doing, I agree with Amanda 100%, we don't do quite a good job of portraying what we're protecting and how much. All you hear is what it costs, you don't hear about what it saves you. And even the people, especially in Omaha, it has to be tremendous in your district that are no longer buying flood insurance, because of your projects. And you're talking $3,000-4,000 a year per household, just that's not been. And so that you're taking out 100-year floodplain. So I think everybody that's doing flood control projects need to do a better job of quit talking about what it costs, but talk about what it could save just in one event, and then when we talk about 100-year flood, I think we've had at least 3 or 4 100-year floods in the last 5 years, and we've had 2 500-year floods in the last 6 years, I think. So yeah, so it's tough to talk about 100-year flood.
Doesn't mean a lot.
But that's all we get assistance through the federal government for us.
Well, I have a question from our online audience. I'll take in quick before the seminar ends. So the question is, does your district work with other agencies like NRCS or with nonprofits for setting your conservation programs and policies? And do you have examples of those types of partnerships?
I'll jump in because we work very closely with all the federal and state, programs. Because of the smaller district size, dollar amount, I think, Niobrara is probably the lowest evaluated district in the state. We have to. So I would say the federal government's kind of like that big brother. We can try to get them in, introduce them to different cost share programs and things, and then, transition or move them into depending equipped with CSP programs and different things. Those are larger scale, that can, definitely pick up bigger tabs and costs on whether it be whole ranch management or irrigation management or just soil health and land conservation practices. The nonprofits, they seem like they, kind of come and go depending on what the aspects are. We get all of them. We get Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Forest Service, Nebraska Forest, Ducks Unlimited, Turkey Federation, you name it, they're at the helm. Throw the Park Service in the mix with the scenic river. Sometimes that can be more of a detriment, I guess, because they want to dictate and control private property. So yeah, there's a lot of give and take and flexibility and trying to understand where everybody's coming from and needs. And at the end of the day, everybody's resources get stretched to the limit. And if you don't try to capitalize on partnerships, you're not gonna, you're limiting yourself on success.
Yeah, I would have to say, I don't know that we work very much with the NGOs when it comes to setting policy. But we certainly work with NRCS. I mean, NRCS is one of our closest partners. And if we're talking about our soils or water or programs that affect them, yeah, we work with our district conservationists quite a bit. It certainly has helped us in the past on some of our policies we set. But yeah, so we take all of our partners' comments, I guess, and concerns into consideration. But when we're setting our policy, I would have to say that's really a board decision when the time comes. We're considering everything we hear, but well, right down to it. NRCS probably has more sway on our board on some of the decisions than any partners we have.
We of course work with NRCS as well quite a bit. So maybe I'll touch on like the not-for-profit, the different agencies. We do have a number of programs. We work with them, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, those sorts of groups. We also have partnered with Heron Haven, which is an agency. It's a location in Omaha. It was floodplain, really a conservation site. That nonprofit runs the visitor center. They run the property, and we just kind of help as we helped establish it. We own the ground, and we provide any large maintenance or large things that come up. But as far as like providing some conservation in the middle of Omaha that we don't have to pay for the day-to-day, that's perfect. They manage the day-to-day. We come in if they need some extra help. But that's an example of a partnership that we have there.
And honestly, with a couple of non-government agencies, we actually have shared staff, a couple of them as well. So it's not like we don't work with them. I think the question was, do we use them when we're setting policy? I don't know. What I mean. There's a difference between having a partner and working with them and sharing staff than also having them set our policy. We have an elected board that sets our policies, so we provide them the information. So, but ultimately that.
Okay, well, I don't want to keep everyone too far past 4:30, so let's thank our speakers and thank you all for coming today.